I heard my daughter-in-law whisper to my stepson, "I'll humiliate him at the altar until he signs the asset transfer to us." She didn't know I was standing 3 feet away, hidden by the pantry door. What she also didn't know was that I'd spent 40 years managing Broadway productions. If anyone knew how to stage a performance, it was me. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. The whisper happened on a Tuesday afternoon in my kitchen. Megan and Jason thought I was upstairs napping, the way old women are supposed to do after lunch. But I don't nap. I haven't napped since my husband Robert died 2 years ago. Sleep feels like a waste of time when you're 62 and acutely aware that every day is borrowed. I'd come down for tea and stopped when I heard their voices. The pantry door was cracked open just enough for me to see them at the kitchen island. Megan was leaning close to Jason, her hand on his arm. The intimacy between them made my skin crawl. "Lucas is too trusting," Megan said. "That's his weakness. We use it." Lucas, my stepson, Robert's biological son from his first marriage, the boy I'd raised since he was 8 years old, after his mother died in a car accident. The man who still called me Mom, even though we shared no blood. "And if he refuses to sign?" Jason asked. "He won't refuse. Not at the altar. Not with 200 guests watching. Not when I'm threatening to reveal everything about his real father." My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the pantry shelves to steady myself. Jason was Robert's son, too, from an affair he'd had before we married. I didn't learn about Jason until 5 years into our marriage, when he showed up at our door demanding acknowledgement. Robert had done the right thing. He'd welcomed Jason into the family, provided for him, included him in the will, but Jason had never stopped resenting Lucas. Lucas was the legitimate son. Lucas had Robert's last name from birth. Lucas had been raised in this house, while Jason bounced between foster homes until he was 18. I understood the resentment. What I didn't understand was this. "The contract is ready," Megan continued. "I had my paralegal draw it up. Ironclad. Lucas signs over his 60% of the estate to a trust. The trust is controlled by you and me. 60%. That was Lucas's share of Robert's estate. $2.5 million in property, investments, and the life insurance payout. "What about Sandra?" Jason asked. "Sandra gets nothing." Megan's voice was cold. "She's not blood. The prenup Robert signed gives her the house and a monthly stipend. Nothing else. Once Lucas signs, we control everything that matters." I felt the walls closing in. Robert and I had been married for 24 years. I'd nursed him through 3 years of cancer. I'd held his hand when he died. And now his own sons, one I'd raised, one I'd accepted, were conspiring to strip away everything. But it was the next part that truly broke my heart. "What about afterwards?" Jason asked. "Lucas isn't stupid. Eventually he'll realize what happened." Megan laughed. It was a cruel sound, nothing like the warm laugh she showed at family dinners. "By then, it'll be too late. The contract is legal. He signed willingly in front of witnesses. And if he tries to contest it—" She paused. "I know things about his father. Things that would destroy Lucas's memory of Robert completely. Let's just say Robert wasn't the saint everyone thinks he was. I have documents, receipts, photos. If Lucas fights us, I'll make sure the whole world knows what kind of man his father really was." I didn't move for a full minute after they left the kitchen. My legs wouldn't work. My mind was racing through possibilities, explanations, anything that might make this less real than it sounded. There were no alternatives. My daughter-in-law was planning to defraud my stepson at his own wedding, using blackmail material about my dead husband. And my other stepson, the one I'd tried so hard to welcome into the family, was helping her. The wedding was in 3 weeks. 3 weeks to stop them. 3 weeks to protect Lucas from the woman he thought he loved. I went upstairs to my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed Robert and I had shared. His photo was still on the nightstand. Handsome, even at 60, with silver hair and kind eyes. Whatever secrets Megan thought she had about him, I didn't care. Robert had been a good husband and a good father. That was the truth that mattered. But truth wouldn't protect Lucas. Evidence would. I pulled out my phone and called the one person I trusted completely. Richard, it's Sandra Cole. I need your help. Richard Barnes had been Robert's attorney for 30 years. After Robert died, he'd become mine. He was 70 now, semi-retired, but still sharp as a tack. Sandra, what's wrong? I told him everything. The whisper, the contract, the blackmail material, Jason's involvement. When I finished, Richard was quiet for a long moment. This is serious, he said finally. What Megan is describing is fraud, coercion, possibly extortion. You could go to the police. With what? A conversation I overheard? They'll deny everything. Megan is a lawyer. She knows how to cover her tracks. Then what do you want to do? I looked at Robert's photo, at the life we'd built together, at the family I'd tried so hard to hold together after he was gone. I want to catch them in the act, I said. I want proof that can't be denied. The answer came to me with the clarity of a spotlight hitting center stage. I was a stage manager for 40 years, Richard. I've organized productions with casts of hundreds. I've coordinated lighting, sound, props, and scripts for shows that ran for years. The wedding is in 3 weeks. What if it wasn't a real wedding? What if it was a production? Silence on the line. You want to stage a fake ceremony? I want to give Megan exactly what she's planning for. An altar, an audience, a moment of triumph. And then I want to pull back the curtain and show everyone who she really is. Richard sighed. This could backfire spectacularly. If Megan suspects anything, she won't. She thinks I'm a harmless old woman who takes naps after lunch. She underestimates me because I let her. And Lucas? Do you plan to tell him? This was the question I'd been avoiding. Lucas loved Megan. He'd proposed to her 6 months ago with the same ring Robert had given me. He talked about their future constantly. Children, a house in the suburbs, growing old together. If I told him the truth, he'd confront Megan. She'd deny everything. It would be my word against hers, and Lucas would be caught in the middle. The wedding would be canceled, but Megan would walk away free. She'd find another victim, another family to destroy. Not yet, I said. If Lucas knows, he'll tip her off. He can't lie to save his life. He never could. So you're going to let him walk into a fake wedding without knowing? I'm going to protect him, the way I've protected him since he was 8 years old. Richard was quiet again. I'll help, he said finally. But Sandra, if this goes wrong, you could lose Lucas forever. He might never forgive you for the deception. I know, but I'd rather have him alive and angry than destroyed by that woman. That night, I started making lists, actors to hire, cameras to install, a script to write. Megan wanted a performance at the altar. I was going to give her the show of a lifetime. 3 weeks, 200 guests to replace with actors, 6 hidden cameras, 1 fake priest, and a team of lawyers waiting in the wings, ready to step forward when the lights came on. I thought about calling Lucas right then, warning him, saving him from the heartbreak that was coming. But I'd seen too many productions fall apart because someone couldn't keep a secret. Lucas wore his heart on his sleeve. He always had. When he was 10, he tried to throw me a surprise birthday party and couldn't stop grinning every time I walked into a room. By the day of the party, I knew everything. The cake flavor, the guest list, even where they'd hidden the presents. If I told him about Megan, he'd confront her within the hour. His face would give him away before he spoke a word, and she would adapt. She would destroy the evidence, craft a new story, turn herself into the victim. Lucas had to walk into that ceremony believing it was real. The heartbreak would come either way. At least this way, it would come with proof, with justice, with the woman who tried to destroy him behind bars. I remembered the first day I met Lucas. He was 8 years old, standing in the doorway of this very house, clutching a stuffed dinosaur that had seen better days. His mother had been dead for 3 months. His father, my new husband, had just married a woman Lucas had never met. "Hi," he'd said, looking up at me with those big brown eyes. "Are you going to be my new mom?" I'd knelt down to his level. "I'm going to be whatever you need me to be." He'd nodded solemnly, considering this. "Can you make pancakes?" My other mom made pancakes on Sundays. "I make the best pancakes in Texas," I'd told him. It was a lie. I could barely manage toast at that point, but I learned. Every Sunday for the next 22 years, I made pancakes. I practiced until they were perfect, because that's what you do for the people you love. Now I had 3 weeks to practice something much harder. 3 weeks to stage a performance that would save his life. Jason watched me across the dinner table that evening. His eyes were calculating, assessing. He thought I didn't notice. He thought I was just a tired old widow who couldn't see what was happening in her own house. Megan sat next to him, her hand casually brushing his arm when she reached for the salt. Too casual. Too familiar. I catalogued the touch without reacting. Lucas sat at the head of the table, in the chair that used to be Robert's. He was talking about the wedding, centerpieces, seating charts, whether to serve chicken or fish. His face glowed when he looked at Megan, 30 years old and still believing in fairy tales. "Mom, are you okay?" Lucas asked, catching my expression. "You seem distracted." I smiled, the same smile I'd worn through opening nights, through disasters backstage that audiences never knew about, through decades of hiding chaos behind a calm facade. "Just thinking about how happy I am for you, sweetheart. It's a lot to take in." Megan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her grip was warm. Her smile was perfect. Only I knew what lay beneath it. "Sandra has been so wonderful through all of this," she said. "I couldn't ask for a better mother-in-law." The words should have stung. Instead, they hardened something inside me. "We're going to make this wedding unforgettable," I said. "I promise you that." After dinner, I retreated to my study and pulled out the notebook I used for production planning. Old habits die hard. The pages were leather-bound, a gift from Robert on our 20th anniversary. Page 1, cast list. I wrote Megan at the top, then Jason. Then, after a long pause, Lucas. My stepson was going to be the star of this production, whether he knew it or not. The leading man who didn't realize the play was a tragedy until the final act. The curtain was about to rise. And when it fell, Megan and Jason would learn what happened when you underestimated a woman who'd spent her life controlling every detail of complex productions. This was going to be my masterpiece. Richard called me 3 days later with news that turned everything upside down. "I found something," he said, "about Megan. Sandra, you need to see this in person." I met him at his office downtown. The building was old, dignified, the kind of place where serious business happened behind closed doors. Richard had practiced law here for 45 years. The walls were lined with photos of him with governors, senators, judges. Robert's photo was there too, the two of them at a charity gala, both smiling. Richard closed the door behind me and gestured to a thick folder on his desk. "I had my investigator run a background check on Megan Price. Standard procedure for prenuptial agreements, which I noticed Lucas never asked for. He said he didn't need one. He said he trusted her completely." Richard's expression told me what he thought of that. Megan Price isn't her real name. Or rather, it wasn't always. She was born Megan Holloway in Kansas City. She changed it legally 8 years ago. Why would she change her name? Richard opened the folder. The first document was a marriage certificate. Because Megan Holloway was married before, to a man named Thomas Chen. They divorced after 2 years. That's not illegal. But this is interesting. He pulled out another document. Thomas Chen was worth $3.2 million when they married. By the time the divorce was finalized, he was bankrupt. Every asset he owned had been transferred to accounts Megan controlled. I stared at the papers. She did this before. She did this at least twice before. After Kansas City, she moved to Denver. New name, new husband, same pattern. David Hollister, worth $4 million. Divorced after 18 months. He lost everything. And no one stopped her? Both men were too ashamed to press charges. She covered her tracks well. The transfers looked voluntary. The paperwork was immaculate. Richard leaned forward. "Megan isn't just a con artist, Sandra. She's a professional. She's been doing this for at least a decade." I thought about Lucas, planning centerpieces and seating charts, about the look on his face when he talked about their future children. "There's more," Richard said. He pulled out a photograph. "This is Thomas Chen, her first husband." The photo showed a man in his 30s, handsome, confident, the kind of man who would never imagine himself a victim. And this is Thomas Chen 6 months after the divorce. The second photo was unrecognizable. The same man, but aged 20 years, hollow eyes, gray skin, standing on a bridge. He tried to kill himself, Richard said quietly. The financial devastation broke him. He spent 4 months in a psychiatric facility. According to my investigator, he's still not recovered. My hands were shaking. This was the woman Lucas wanted to marry, the woman who smiled at family dinners and called me the best mother-in-law. What about David Hollister, the second husband? Richard's face darkened. David Hollister died 6 months after the divorce. Heart attack. He was 38 years old. That's young for a heart attack. Very young. The official cause was stress-related cardiac arrest, but my investigator spoke to David's sister. She believes Megan was somehow involved. There's no proof, of course. There never is with someone like Megan. I sat in silence, processing everything. 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks to stop this woman from destroying Lucas the way she'd destroyed Thomas Chen and David Hollister. We need to go to the police, I said. With what? A pattern of legal divorces and one suspicious death? Megan is a lawyer, Sandra. She knows exactly where the lines are. She's never crossed one that can be proven. So we let her do this to Lucas? No. Richard stood and walked to the window. We do exactly what you suggested. We catch her in the act. But now we do it knowing what we're dealing with. This woman is dangerous. Not just financially, potentially lethal. I thought about the wedding. About Megan standing at the altar, holding a contract, waiting for Lucas to sign away his inheritance. The original plan still works, I said. We replace the guests with actors. We install cameras. We let her incriminate herself. And when she does, then we have proof. Real proof. The kind that sends her to prison. Richard nodded slowly. I'll contact the FBI. Fraud across state lines is federal jurisdiction. If we can coordinate with them, we might be able to bring charges that actually stick. The next 2 weeks were the most intense of my life. Not since the opening night of my first Broadway show had I worked this hard on a single production. Richard contacted a friend at the FBI, Special Agent Marcus Webb, who'd been tracking financial predators for 15 years. When Richard explained what we had, Webb was immediately interested. Megan Price is a ghost, Webb told me during our first meeting. We've suspected someone like her exists for years. The pattern of marriages, the financial devastation, the way victims are too ashamed to come forward. But we've never been able to identify her. Now we have. And with your help, we might finally be able to stop her. The plan evolved. The FBI would provide undercover agents to mix with the actors. The priest would be an agent wired for sound. The groomsmen would be federal prosecutors, ready to move the moment Megan incriminated herself. What about the witnesses? I asked. Megan's family will be at the wedding. We'll handle them separately. Her parents died years ago. That's verified. She has no siblings. Any family she brings will likely be accomplices or hired stand-ins. Of course. A woman who changed her name, who erased her past, who left a trail of broken men behind her. She wouldn't have real family at her wedding. The hardest part was hiding everything from Lucas. He came over twice a week for wedding planning meetings. He'd spread out fabric samples and flower arrangements on the dining room table, asking my opinion on colors and patterns. Megan was always there, smiling, touching his arm, playing the role of devoted bride-to-be. I played my role too, the supportive mother-in-law, the excited wedding planner, the harmless old woman who noticed nothing. But there were moments when the mask almost slipped. One evening, Lucas showed me the guest book he'd ordered, leather-bound, with gold lettering. Mr. and Mrs. Lucas Cole, embossed on the front. Isn't it beautiful, Mom? He asked. I can't wait to fill it with everyone's signatures. I looked at that guest book and saw 200 actors signing fake names. I saw the FBI agents mixed in among them. I saw the moment when Lucas would realize that nothing about this day was real. It's perfect, I said. Everything is going to be perfect. The guest list was the most complicated part. Lucas had invited friends from college, work colleagues, distant relatives. 212 people who expected to attend a wedding. I had to uninvite them without anyone knowing. Richard helped with the logistics. We sent out emails, forged from Lucas's account, explaining that the venue had been damaged and the wedding was postponed. Then we sent new invitations to different addresses for a private ceremony at a rescheduled date. The real guests would show up 3 days late to an empty venue. By then, it would all be over. In their place, I hired actors. 40 of them, experienced professionals who could play multiple roles. I briefed them individually, explaining only what they needed to know. Most thought they were participating in an elaborate anniversary surprise. Only the core team, the FBI agents disguised as groomsmen, knew the truth. The venue was a restored plantation outside Austin. Beautiful grounds, a historic chapel, rooms that could be converted to hold cameras and recording equipment. The owner was an old friend from my theater days. When I explained what I needed, she didn't hesitate. "Honey, after 40 years in show business, nothing surprises me anymore. Whatever you need, it's yours." We installed 6 hidden cameras, state-of-the-art equipment, the kind used in FBI stings. 4 in the chapel, 1 in the bride's dressing room, 1 in the groom's suite, every angle covered, every word recorded. Jason remained the wild card. He'd been spending more time at the house, watching me with those calculating eyes. I caught him going through papers in Robert's study one afternoon. "Looking for something?" I asked from the doorway. He startled. "Just old photos. Thought they might be nice for the wedding slideshow." "The photo albums are in the living room. Robert kept his business papers in here." His smile was thin. Must have gotten confused. That night, I changed the locks on Robert's study and moved the most sensitive documents to Richard's office. Whatever secrets Megan thought she had about my husband, they weren't going to find them in this house. 5 days before the wedding, Richard called with one final piece of information. "I found the original will," he said. "The real one. Robert's notes are all over it. It's different from the one that was filed with the court. The percentages are different. Lucas was supposed to get 60%. Jason was supposed to get 40%. But the filed version shows a 50-50 split. Someone forged it. Someone with access to Robert's documents. Someone who knew his signature well enough to copy it. Jason. It had to be Jason. He'd been in this house 100 times over the past 2 years. He'd had access to Robert's study, to his papers, to everything. The notary who certified the forged will died last year. Convenient timing. But if we can get Jason to admit what he did, we will, I said. At the wedding, on camera, Richard was quiet for a moment. "Sandra, I need to ask you something. Are you prepared for what's going to happen? When Lucas finds out the truth, about Megan, about Jason, about what you did to protect him, I thought about that stuffed dinosaur. About the 8-year-old boy who asked if I was going to be his new mom. About 22 years of Sunday morning pancakes. He's going to hate me at first," I said. "But hate fades. What Megan was planning to do to him, that would have destroyed him forever. I'm choosing temporary hate over permanent destruction. You're a brave woman, Sandra Cole. I'm a mother. That's all." The night before the wedding, I sat in my study and reviewed every detail. The cast was in place. The cameras were installed. The FBI agents were briefed. The prosecutors were ready. Tomorrow, Megan Price would step into the spotlight. She would perform her final act, triumphant and unaware. And then the curtain would fall. Somewhere in this house, Jason was sleeping peacefully, dreaming of millions he would never see. In an apartment across town, Megan was probably reviewing her lines, preparing for her moment of victory. Neither of them knew that the real performance hadn't even begun. I closed my notebook and turned off the light. Opening night was tomorrow. The morning of the wedding, I received a phone call that changed everything. "Mrs. Cole, this is Detective Patricia Vance with the Austin Police Department. I'm calling about a man named David Hollister." I was in the middle of checking camera placements with Richard. I stepped outside the chapel, my heart pounding. "I know the name. He was married to Megan Price. We know about your investigation, Mrs. Cole. The FBI has been coordinating with us. We have new information. Information that makes today's operation even more critical. David Hollister didn't die of a heart attack. We've re-examined the toxicology reports from his autopsy. There were trace amounts of a compound that wasn't identified at the time. A compound that mimics cardiac arrest symptoms. We believe so, yes. And if Megan Price did it once, she may do it again. I leaned against the chapel wall, trying to breathe. Murder. We weren't just dealing with fraud. We were dealing with a killer. Mrs. Cole, we need you to understand the stakes. If Megan feels cornered today, if she realizes the trap, she could become dangerous. We're increasing security, but we need you to be aware. One more thing. We believe Jason Cole may not know about the murder. He likely thinks he's partnering with a con artist, not a killer. That could work in our favor if we can separate them during the confrontation. After the call, I found Richard in the control room we'd set up in the plantation's guest house. Monitors showed feeds from all 6 cameras. FBI agents were testing their equipment. We need to tell Lucas, I said. Richard looked up sharply. Sandra, we've been over this. She murdered her last husband. This isn't just about money anymore. Lucas could be in physical danger. If we tell him now, the whole operation falls apart. Megan walks free. She finds another victim. And if we don't tell him, he marries a murderer. The marriage won't be legal. The priest is an actor. The license isn't filed. I stared at Richard. I'd known him for 30 years. He'd never lied to me. You didn't tell me the marriage wouldn't be legal. I didn't think you needed to know. The ceremony is theater. You said so yourself. None of it is real. He was right, technically. But Lucas didn't know that. Lucas thought he was really getting married today. He thought today was the beginning of his new life. After, I said finally. After the ceremony, when everything comes out, we tell him about the murder, about all of it. But not before, not now. Richard nodded. I think that's the right call. I wasn't sure I agreed, but we were too far in to turn back. The guests began arriving at 1 o'clock. 40 actors in wedding finery, playing their roles perfectly. They greeted each other like old friends, commented on the beautiful venue, took their seats in the chapel with practiced ease. Megan's family arrived in a black SUV. 3 people I'd never seen before, a man and woman in their 60s, playing her parents, and a younger woman playing her cousin. FBI surveillance had confirmed they were hired actors, paid in cash, given scripts. Megan didn't have anyone real. No genuine friends, no actual family. Just props and performers, like everything else in her life. Jason showed up in his groomsman's tux, looking nervous. He kept checking his phone, texting someone. I watched him on the monitor, wondering if he knew about David Hollister, wondering if he cared. I met him at the entrance to the chapel, the way we'd planned. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, young and hopeful and completely unaware. Mom. He hugged me tight. This is it. I can't believe it's finally happening. I held on to him for a moment longer than necessary. I love you, I said. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that. I love you more than anything in this world. He pulled back, confused. Mom, are you okay? You seem intense. I'm just emotional. Weddings do that to me. He laughed. That easy laugh I'd loved for 22 years. You're going to cry during the ceremony, aren't you? He kissed my cheek and went to take his place at the altar. I watched him go, knowing that the next time I saw him, everything would be different. The ceremony began at 2 o'clock sharp. The chapel was beautiful, white flowers on every pew, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows, a string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon. I sat in the front row, exactly where a mother of the groom should sit. Behind me, 40 actors pretended to be friends and family. In the balcony, FBI technicians monitored every camera, every microphone, every angle. Megan walked down the aisle on the arm of her fake father. Her dress was white, designer, probably paid for with money she'd stolen from someone else. She looked beautiful. She looked innocent. She looked like a woman in love. She reached the altar and took Lucas's hands. They smiled at each other, the perfect picture of a happy couple. The priest, Special Agent Marcus Webb in clerical robes, began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Lucas Cole and Megan Price. The words washed over me. I'd heard them hundreds of times at other weddings, on television, in movies. They were supposed to mean something. Today, they were just a script. I watched Megan's face as the ceremony progressed. She was good. I had to give her that. Every expression, every tear, every whispered "I do" was perfectly calibrated. But I'd been managing performers for 40 years. I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the way she measured Lucas's reactions, the way she positioned herself for the cameras she didn't know were there. Do you, Lucas Cole, take Megan Price to be your lawful wedded wife? Lucas's voice was strong and clear. I do. And do you, Megan Price, take Lucas Cole to be your lawful wedded husband? Megan paused. Her smile flickered. This was her moment. A gasp from the audience. Scripted, but convincing. Lucas's face froze. Megan, what are you? I don't want to marry you, Lucas. Not like this. Not until you prove that you really love me. Prove it? I love you more than anything. Then sign this. She reached into her dress and pulled out a folded document. Legal paper. Multiple pages. Lucas stared at it. What is this? It's a prenuptial agreement. I know we said we didn't need one, but I've been thinking. Your stepmother controls so much of your father's estate. This document ensures that what's yours stays yours, and what's mine stays mine. It was a masterful performance. She made it sound reasonable, protective, loving even. Lucas took the document, skimmed the pages. This says I'm transferring 60% of my inheritance to a trust controlled by you and Jason. It's for tax purposes, Megan said smoothly. Your brother explained it to me. This way the assets are protected from my brother? You discussed my inheritance with Jason? Megan's smile tightened. Jason has been very helpful. He understands finances better than either of us. Lucas looked out at the audience. His eyes found Jason, standing in the groomsmen's line, standing next to men he didn't know were FBI agents. Jason? What is she talking about? Jason stepped forward. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. Lucas, just sign it. It's better for everyone this way. You don't understand how these things work. How what things work? Stealing from me at my own wedding? It's not stealing. It's protecting the family. Protecting the family by transferring my inheritance to Megan? The room was silent. Even the actors seemed to sense that something real was happening. Megan reached for Lucas's arm. Baby, you're making a scene. Just sign the document. We can discuss everything later. No. Lucas stepped back. The document fell to the altar floor. I'm not signing anything. I'm not doing this. Megan's face changed. The mask of the loving bride cracked, revealing something harder underneath. Lucas, you're going to sign that document. You're going to sign it right now, or I'm going to tell everyone here what your father really did, what Robert Cole really was. What are you talking about? Your father wasn't a saint. He had secrets. Dark secrets. Secrets that would destroy your precious memory of him forever. Lucas looked at me. I saw the question in his eyes. I nodded slightly. The signal we'd arranged with the FBI. Agent Webb, the priest, stepped forward. His voice was completely different now. Professional. Authoritative. Megan froze. What did you say? I said cut. Webb pulled off his clerical collar. This ceremony is over. The performance is finished. The chapel doors opened. FBI agents in tactical vests streamed in. The groomsmen converged on the altar, flashing badges. Megan's face went white. Megan Price, also known as Megan Holloway, you're under arrest for fraud, coercion, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane, Megan screamed. She turned to Jason. Do something! But Jason was already being handcuffed by another agent. Jason Cole, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery of legal documents. Wait, what? I didn't forge anything. She told me, save it for your lawyer, sir. I watched from my seat in the front row. The actors had cleared out, replaced by real FBI personnel. Cameras that had been hidden were now visible, their red lights blinking. Lucas stood at the altar, alone. His tuxedo was pristine, but his face was devastated. I walked up to him, slowly. Carefully. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. You knew. You knew about all of this. I overheard them planning it 3 weeks ago. The whisper in the kitchen. I knew she was going to try to steal from you. And you didn't tell me? If I'd told you, she would have walked free. She would have done this to someone else. This was the only way to stop her. Lucas was shaking. The guests, the ceremony, none of it was real. None of it was real. He looked at Megan, being led out of the chapel in handcuffs. At Jason, protesting his innocence to agents who didn't believe him. She never loved me, he said. Not for 1 second. The tears came then. Lucas Cole, 30 years old, sobbing at an altar that had never been real, at a wedding that was always going to be a lie. I held him the way I had when he was 8 years old, and his world fell apart for the first time. Some things never change. Some pain never gets easier. And some betrayals leave scars that never fully heal. But at least he was alive. At least he was free. At least the woman who had tried to destroy him was finally going to pay. In that moment, it was enough. The week after the fake wedding was the longest of my life. Lucas moved back into the house. Not because he forgave me, he made that abundantly clear, but because he had nowhere else to go. The apartment he'd shared with Megan was a crime scene. His friends had been uninvited to a wedding that turned out to be fake. His entire support system had been systematically replaced with actors. He didn't speak to me for the first 3 days. He'd come down for meals, eat in silence, and retreat to his old bedroom. The door stayed closed. When I knocked, he didn't answer. Richard called every day with updates on the investigation. Megan had lawyered up immediately, a criminal defense attorney from Dallas with a reputation for getting guilty people acquitted. Jason, meanwhile, was singing like a bird. He's cooperating fully, Richard told me. Claims he didn't know about the murder. Claims Megan told him the asset transfer was Lucas's idea. And the forged will? He admits he helped with that. Says Megan convinced him it was just correcting an injustice, that Robert always meant for the estate to be split 50-50, and the original will was a mistake. Robert's handwritten notes say otherwise. Yes, they do. The FBI has the original will now. Jason's cooperation isn't going to save him from forgery charges. I hung up and stared out the kitchen window. The same kitchen where I'd overheard the whisper that started everything. 3 weeks ago, I'd stood in this room and made a decision that would change everything. I didn't regret it, but I wasn't sure I'd made it right. On the 4th day, Lucas finally spoke. I want to understand. I was in the living room, reading a book I hadn't actually absorbed a word of. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face guarded. Tell me everything, he said. From the beginning. I told him about the whisper, about the contract Megan had prepared, about Jason's involvement, about calling Richard and hatching the plan to stage the wedding as a performance. I told him about Megan's past. Thomas Chen, destroyed and suicidal. David Hollister, dead at 38. She murdered her second husband, Lucas said. His voice was flat. The police believe so. They're still building the case. And you knew this before the wedding. I found out the morning of. It was too late to change the plan. Lucas sat down heavily on the couch. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. You should have told me. The moment you heard that whisper, you should have come to me. If I'd told you, you would have confronted her. She would have denied everything. It would have been my word against hers. And you thought I'd believe her over you? The question hung in the air. I thought about how to answer honestly. I thought you might. You loved her, Lucas. When people love someone, they make excuses. They see what they want to see. So you decided for me. You made me walk into a fake wedding, believing it was real, because you didn't trust me to handle the truth. I couldn't deny it. Yes. Lucas was quiet for a long time. Dad always said you were the strongest person he knew, he said finally. He said when you decided something, nothing could stop you. He meant it as a compliment. Right now, it doesn't feel like a compliment. He left the room. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, then the sound of his bedroom door closing. Progress, I told myself. At least he was talking. The FBI interviews started the next week. Special Agent Webb came to the house with a team of investigators, set up a conference room, and went through every detail of the operation. Lucas cooperated fully, providing testimony about his relationship with Megan, the financial arrangements they'd discussed, everything she'd said and done over the past 18 months. She was perfect, Lucas said during one session. I was sitting in the corner, observing. Looking back, that should have been a warning sign. Nobody's that perfect. Nobody anticipates every need, agrees with every opinion, fits every mold, but I wanted to believe it. When did you first meet Ms. Price? Agent Webb asked. A charity gala, 2 years ago. She was working the room, collecting donations for a children's hospital. Beautiful, charming, passionate about helping others. Everything I thought I wanted. And how did the relationship progress? Fast. Too fast, probably. She moved in after 4 months. We were engaged within a year. She said she didn't want to waste time. She knew what she wanted. Did she show interest in your finances early on? Lucas laughed bitterly. She showed interest in everything. My family, my job, my inheritance. But she framed it as caring. Tell me about your father. What was he like? What did he leave you? I thought she was trying to understand me. Now I realize she was taking inventory. The interviews with Jason were more contentious. He'd been released on bail, Richard helped arrange it despite my objections, and came to the house twice to plead his case. Sandra, you have to understand, he said the first time. I didn't know what she was really planning. She told me the asset transfer was Lucas's idea. She said he wanted to protect the family money from estate taxes. And you believed her? Why wouldn't I? She's a lawyer. She knows this stuff. You forged Robert's will. You altered the percentages to give yourself more. Jason's face went pale. That was different. The original will wasn't fair. Robert treated Lucas like his real son and me like a mistake he was obligated to fix. Robert acknowledged you. He provided for you. He included you in his will. 40%. Lucas got 60. Even in death, I was second best. I looked at this man, my stepson technically, though we'd never been close. He was 38 years old, still bitter about a childhood spent in foster care, still resentful of a brother who'd had everything he'd lacked. Robert gave you 40% because you came into his life at 18, I said quietly. Lucas had been with us since he was 8. He was raised in this house, went to school here, built a life here. The percentages reflected that reality. Reality. Jason's voice was bitter. The reality that some children matter more than others. The reality that Robert loved you both, but you chose not to see it. Jason left without another word. I never saw him again outside of courtrooms. The case against Megan grew stronger each day. The FBI traced her history back 15 years, uncovering a pattern of marriages, financial devastation, and convenient deaths that spanned 5 states. 3 husbands, 3 fortunes destroyed, 2 suspicious deaths. Thomas Chen nearly killed himself, David Hollister, actually dead. And now Lucas, saved only by a whisper in a kitchen. She had a type, Agent Webb explained during one briefing. Wealthy, emotionally vulnerable men with strong ties to family money. She'd identify them at charity events, social gatherings, places where rich men went to feel good about themselves. Then the love bombing began. Intense attention, perfect understanding. Whatever the target wanted, she became. By the time they realized something was wrong, it was too late. Why didn't anyone catch her before? Because the victims were too ashamed to come forward. Because the financial transfers looked voluntary. Because she changed her name and moved states after each score. Now we have recordings. We have the forged documents. We have Jason's testimony. And we have the toxicology evidence from David Hollister's autopsy. What about her defense? Webb's expression was grim. Her lawyer is going for diminished capacity. Claims she was abused as a child, developed antisocial personality disorder, isn't fully responsible for her actions. Not with a jury that sees those videos. Not when they hear what she did to Lucas. The trial was scheduled for 3 months out. 3 months of preparation, of testimony, of reliving every moment of the fake wedding and everything that led up to it. Lucas started therapy in the 2nd week, a specialist in trauma and betrayal, recommended by Richard. The sessions were private, but I noticed changes. He started coming out of his room more, started eating at the table instead of retreating, started, slowly, to look at me without hatred in his eyes. One evening, he asked me a question I hadn't expected. "Did you know Dad had secrets?" We were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset over the back garden, the first time we'd sat together since before the wedding. "Everyone has secrets," I said carefully. "Your father wasn't perfect." Megan said she had documents, photos, things that would destroy my memory of him. She was lying. Richard and I went through every paper in that house. There's nothing that would shame Robert. She was bluffing. But she believed it. She believed she had leverage. She believed Jason told her he had leverage. Jason resented your father for years. He probably invented things to impress her. Lucas was quiet for a moment. "I miss him," he said. "Dad. I miss being able to call him when things fall apart." "I know. I miss him too. You handled everything on your own. 3 weeks to plan a fake wedding, manage the FBI, protect me from a murderer, and you did it alone." "I wasn't alone. Richard helped. The FBI helped. But the decision was yours. The weight was on you." I looked at my stepson, the 8-year-old with the stuffed dinosaur, all grown up now, scarred in ways that would take years to heal. "That's what mothers do," I said. "We carry the weight so our children don't have to." He reached over and took my hand, just for a moment, just long enough to mean something. "I'm still angry," he said, "but I understand why you did it. That's enough for now." We sat together until the stars came out, not quite reconciled, but closer than we'd been since the truth came out. 3 months until the trial. 3 months to heal what could be healed. And then, finally, justice. The trial began on a gray November morning. The federal courthouse in Austin was packed with reporters, spectators, and the curious. Megan Price, serial con artist, suspected murderer, the woman who had tried to destroy my family, sat at the defense table in a modest gray dress, looking every inch the wronged innocent. I'd spent 40 years reading performers. I recognized the costume choice immediately. The muted colors, the understated jewelry, the hair pulled back in a simple bun. She wanted the jury to see a woman unfairly accused, a victim of circumstances beyond her control. The prosecution had different plans. Federal prosecutor Diana Walsh was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and no patience for dramatics. She'd built her career on financial crimes, and Megan was her white whale, a predator who'd evaded justice for over a decade. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said in her opening statement, "the defendant is not who she appears to be. She is not a loving wife, wrongly accused. She is not a victim of circumstance. Megan Price, also known as Megan Holloway, is a professional predator who has destroyed 3 men, killed 1, and attempted to destroy a 4th." The jury leaned forward. They wanted to believe the prosecutor. But they also saw Megan, small and pale at the defense table, and wondered how such a woman could be capable of what was alleged. I sat in the front row of the gallery, Lucas beside me. He'd wanted to be here for every moment of the trial. His therapist had questioned whether it was healthy, but Lucas was adamant. "I need to see her face when the truth comes out," he'd said. "I need to know it's really over." The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. First came the financial evidence. Years of bank transfers, forged documents, and carefully constructed lies. Each piece was explained clearly, connected to Megan's pattern of behavior. Then came the witnesses. Thomas Chen, her first husband, was wheeled into the courtroom. He was 42 years old but looked 60. Thin, gray, broken in ways that went deeper than bone. "Can you describe your relationship with the defendant?" Walsh asked. Thomas spoke slowly, carefully, as if each word cost him. "She made me believe I was the center of her universe. For 2 years, I thought I had found the perfect woman. And then she took everything. My money, my business, my reason to live." "What did she take specifically?" $3.2 million. Every account, every investment, every property. By the time the divorce was finalized, I had nothing. "Did you try to contest the transfers?" "She had documents, signatures I don't remember making, authorizations I never gave. Her lawyers said everything was legal, that I'd agreed to it all. He paused, struggling to continue. 6 months later, I was standing on the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, ready to jump. The courtroom was silent. "What stopped you?" Walsh asked. "A stranger. A man who happened to be driving by. He pulled over and talked to me for 3 hours. I don't even remember his name, but he saved my life." I looked at Megan. Her expression hadn't changed. She was watching Thomas with the calm interest of a scientist observing a specimen. David Hollister's sister testified next. Rebecca Hollister was a fierce woman, red-haired and sharp-tongued, who'd spent 5 years trying to prove that her brother's death wasn't an accident. "David was the healthiest person I knew," she said. "Ran marathons, never smoked, ate organic everything. When they told me he died of a heart attack at 38, I knew something was wrong. Did you share your suspicions with the police?" I tried. They said it was stress-related cardiac arrest. The divorce had been brutal. Megan had taken everything, same as Thomas Chen. The coroner ruled it natural causes. Case closed. "But you kept investigating." "My brother didn't die of stress? My brother was murdered? And she—" Rebecca pointed at Megan. "She killed him to cover her tracks." Megan's lawyer objected. The judge sustained. But the damage was done. The jury had heard the accusation, and they would remember it. The video evidence came on day 4 of the trial. The prosecution had edited together the 6 camera feeds from the fake wedding into a single devastating narrative. The courtroom watched as Megan walked down the aisle, all smiles and tears. They saw the vows, the moment of "I don't," the contract pulled from her dress, and then they heard her words to Lucas. "You're going to sign that document. You're going to sign it right now, or I'm going to tell everyone here what your father really did." "What are you talking about? Your father wasn't a saint. He had secrets, dark secrets, secrets that would destroy your precious memory of him forever." The jury watched Lucas's face as he realized the woman he loved was a fraud. They watched Megan's mask crack when the priest yelled, "Cut!" They watched her scream as the FBI agents closed in. "I want the jury to see this moment clearly," Walsh said. "This is not a woman wrongly accused. This is a predator caught in the act." Jason's testimony came on day 6. He appeared under a cooperation agreement, reduced charges in exchange for full disclosure. "Cole came to me with a plan," he said. "She said Lucas didn't deserve 60% of the estate. She said if I helped her, we could correct the imbalance." "How did she propose to correct it?" "The asset transfer. Lucas would sign over his share at the wedding. Megan and I would control the trust. I'd get 40% of whatever we extracted." "And the forged will?" Jason looked at his hands. "That was my idea. I knew where my father kept his papers. I knew his signature. Megan said the new percentages were only fair. Did you know about Ms. Price's previous marriages?" I thought she was just a lawyer who saw an opportunity. I didn't know about Thomas Chen or David Hollister. I didn't know about the deaths. Would it have changed your involvement if you had known?" Jason was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he said finally. "I like to think it would. But I was so angry at my father, at Lucas, at everyone who had what I didn't. I'm not sure anything would have stopped me." The defense's case was weak by comparison. Megan's lawyer painted her as a victim of abusive relationships, a woman who'd been exploited by the men she married. He claimed the financial transfers were consensual, the result of failed marriages rather than criminal schemes. "My client is not a monster," he said in his closing argument. "She is a woman who made bad choices in difficult circumstances. The prosecution wants you to see a villain. I ask you to see a human being." But the prosecution had the final word. "A human being?" Walsh said. "Thomas Chen nearly died because of her. David Hollister did die. Lucas Cole was saved only by the courage of his stepmother, who risked everything to expose the truth." She walked to the jury box and looked each juror in the eye. "This woman is not a victim. She is a predator who has spent 15 years destroying lives for profit. The evidence is clear. The pattern is undeniable. Your verdict should be too." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. I sat in the corridor with Lucas, waiting. His hand found mine at some point, and he didn't let go. "Whatever happens," he said, "thank you. for seeing what I couldn't see, for protecting me when I didn't know I needed protection. That's what mothers do. You're not my mother. The word stung, but his grip on my hand tightened. You're better than any mother could be, he continued. You chose to love me. Every Sunday morning, every pancake, every late night when I needed someone to talk to. You didn't have to do any of it, but you did. I looked at my stepson, the 8-year-old with the stuffed dinosaur, now a man who had survived the worst betrayal imaginable. I'd do it all again, I said, every bit of it. The jury returned at 4:30. We filed back into the courtroom. Megan stood at the defense table, her face still carefully composed. But I saw the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremble in her hands. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. The foreman stood. My heart was pounding. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of coercion, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of second-degree murder in the death of David Hollister, we find the defendant guilty. Megan's composure finally broke. She grabbed her lawyer's arm, shaking her head, muttering something I couldn't hear. 2 marshals moved toward her. On the charge of attempted fraud, we find the defendant guilty. 4 guilty verdicts. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed for the exits. Victims' families embraced. Thomas Chen, still in his wheelchair, was weeping. I looked at Lucas. He was staring at Megan, watching as she was handcuffed and led away. It's over, he said. Not quite. The sentencing would come later. Jason's cooperation had earned him a reduced charge, but he still faced prison time. There would be civil suits, asset recovery, years of untangling Megan's web of lies. But the worst was over. The woman who had tried to destroy my family was going to prison, and Lucas, my stepson, the boy I'd loved for 22 years, was finally free. We walked out of the courthouse together, into the November sunlight. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. I ignored all of it. Pancakes? I asked. Lucas almost smiled. It's 4 in the afternoon. Breakfast for dinner, old Cole family tradition. He linked his arm through mine. Lead the way, Mom. It was the first time he'd called me that since the wedding, and despite everything, the pain, the betrayal, the months of silence, it felt like coming home. 2 years have passed since the verdict. Megan Price is serving a 30-year sentence in a federal women's prison in West Virginia. She'll be 70 when she's eligible for parole, if she lives that long. The other inmates learned what she did, and predators aren't popular in prison, even among criminals. I visited her once, about 6 months after the sentencing. I'm not sure why. Closure, maybe. Or just the need to look into the eyes of the woman who tried to destroy my family. She'd aged 20 years in 6 months. The carefully maintained beauty was gone, replaced by something hollow and sharp. She sat across from me in the visiting room, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hair streaked with gray. "Why are you here?" she asked. Her voice was flat. The charm was gone. "I wanted to see you. The real you. This is the real me." She gestured at the room around her. "Is this what you wanted?" "What I wanted was for you to leave my family alone. But you couldn't do that, could you?" Megan studied me for a long moment. "You know what's funny? I underestimated you. Every step of the way. I saw a harmless old widow too wrapped up in grief to notice what was happening in her own house. I never imagined you'd be the one to bring me down." "That was your mistake." "One of many." She almost smiled. "You staged a fake wedding. You replaced 200 guests with actors. You had FBI agents pretending to be groomsmen. That's not the work of a harmless old widow. I was a stage manager for 40 years. I know how to put on a show." "So I discovered." Megan leaned back in her chair. "Tell me something. If I'd succeeded, if Lucas had signed that contract and married me, what would you have done?" "I would have found another way to stop you. And if there was no other way..." I thought about the question, about the lengths I'd been willing to go to protect Lucas. "There's always another way," I said. "That's what you never understood. You saw obstacles and tried to eliminate them. I saw obstacles and found ways around them." Megan nodded slowly. "Maybe that's why you won." I won because you're a sociopath who underestimated the people around you. I won because you thought Lucas was just a target and I was just an obstacle. You never saw us as people. People are targets. People are obstacles. That's all anyone is. Goodbye, Megan. I won't be visiting again. I know. Her eyes followed me to the door. Sandra, one more thing. David Hollister, he didn't suffer. I made sure of that. Whatever else you think of me, I'm not cruel. I'm just practical. I left without responding. Some confessions don't deserve acknowledgement. Jason served 18 months at a minimum security facility in Oklahoma. His cooperation had earned him a reduced sentence, but he still had to pay for his part in the conspiracy. I visited him twice. The first time, he apologized. The second time, he asked if there was any way back into the family. Lucas doesn't want a relationship with you, I told him. He's made that clear. I looked at my stepson, Robert's other son, the one I'd never quite managed to connect with. I'm keeping the door open, I said. Not wide open, but not locked either. If you genuinely change, if you prove you can be trusted, there might be a place for you. Someday. What does that look like? Proving I can be trusted, staying out of trouble, making amends where you can, not expecting anything in return. I paused, and never, ever trying to manipulate Lucas again. If you do, I'll make what happened to Megan look gentle. Jason nodded. I think he believed me. He was released 4 months ago. Last I heard, he'd taken a job in Denver, working for a nonprofit that helped ex-convicts find employment. Whether it was genuine rehabilitation or just another act, I couldn't say. Time would tell. Lucas rebuilt his life piece by piece. He went back to work 6 months after the trial. A different job, a fresh start. He sold the apartment he'd shared with Megan and bought a small house on the outskirts of Austin, close enough to visit me regularly, far enough to have his own space. Therapy helped. So did time. So did the support group he joined for victims of financial predators. A community of people who understood what it felt like to be systematically destroyed by someone they trusted. He started dating again about a year after the trial. Nothing serious at first, just coffee with colleagues, dinner with friends of friends, testing the waters, learning to trust again. Her name is Rachel. She's a veterinarian with kind eyes and a gentle manner. They met at a farmer's market, of all places, arguing over the last basket of peaches. Lucas came home that evening with a grin I hadn't seen in years. She told me I had terrible taste in fruit, he said, and then she bought me a coffee to apologize. And I think I might be in trouble. They've been dating for 8 months now. She came to dinner last week, nervous and polite. I liked her immediately, not because she was perfect, no one is, but because she was real. What you saw was what you got. After dinner, while Lucas walked Rachel to her car, I watched them through the kitchen window. He was laughing at something she said. His whole face lit up with joy. He looked like himself again, like the boy who used to come running home from school, bursting with stories and questions and life. I set the table for Sunday breakfast the next morning. Pancakes, as always. But this time, there were 3 place settings instead of 2. You're cooking for Rachel now? Lucas asked when he came downstairs. She's family. Family eats pancakes on Sunday. He hugged me then. A real hug. The kind that says more than words ever could. Thank you, he said, for everything. I'd do it all again. I know. That's what makes it matter. Richard comes over for dinner every Thursday now. We've become close friends, the way you become friends with someone who's seen you at your worst and stayed anyway. We talk about Robert sometimes, about the life I built with him, the memories that remain. He would be proud of you, Richard said one evening. What you did to protect Lucas, Robert would have approved. Would he? I lied to his son. I staged a fake wedding. I had his ex-affair's son arrested. You saved Lucas's life. Robert would have done the same thing. Maybe he would have. Maybe every parent would, given the choice between lies and destruction. I'll never know for certain. What I know is this. I made decisions in the dark, when the stakes were impossibly high and the right path was nowhere to be seen. I chose to deceive the person I loved most in order to protect him. I gambled everything on a performance that could have failed at any moment, and somehow, against all odds, it worked. The production notebook sits on my desk now, leather-bound, Robert's anniversary gift. The pages are filled with my planning notes, cast lists, camera placements, timing cues, evidence of the most important show I ever staged. I haven't opened it since the trial. There's no need. The performance is over. The curtain has fallen. And the reviews, as they say, are in. 5 stars. Standing ovation. A show that saved a life. Not bad for a 62-year-old retired stage manager who was supposed to be napping. The thing about theater is that every production ends. The actors take their bows. The audience goes home. The lights go dark. But the story doesn't really end. It continues in the people who experienced it, changing them in ways they might not realize until years later. I changed Lucas. Megan changed him too, in darker ways. But together we gave him something valuable. Proof that love can be stronger than deception. Proof that family isn't just about blood, but about the people willing to fight for you when everything falls apart. Sunday breakfast is in an hour. Lucas and Rachel will arrive soon, bringing bagels and stories about their week. The kitchen smells like pancakes and fresh coffee. The sun is streaming through the windows. This isn't a happy ending. Happy endings are for movies. This is something better, a real ending. Messy and complicated and imperfect, but true. Megan is in prison. Jason is trying to rebuild. Lucas is healing. And I'm here, in the kitchen where it all started, making pancakes like I have every Sunday for 22 years. Some traditions never change. Some love never fades. And some performances, even the fake ones, contain more truth than anything real ever could. The doorbell rings. I wipe my hands on my apron and go to answer it. "Mom," Lucas calls through the door. "We brought peaches." I open the door to my son, my real son, blood or not, and the woman he loves. They're both smiling, arms full of farmers market finds. "Come in," I say. "Breakfast is almost ready." The curtain rises on another Sunday morning, another performance, this one completely real. And I wouldn't have it any other way.